moving to quantum thinking. And so let's explore this idea of quantum thinking outside of the box. So what is the box? So let's look at the way the world is and what we've been taught in our educational systems, modern life, these kind of things. We have been living according to narratives, and we fit these different, we're asked to fit within these constructs. Think of constructs like liberal and conservative, and then there's the story of religion, and then there's the story of science and technology, just trying to grab and onto more understanding of the world through the physical senses. So on that is a linear line, and then within that linear line is linear thinking, which is we have to live within these parameters. We have to decide whether we're a liberal or a conservative. We have to decide race, like what does that mean, and then we give value to it and value judgments to it. And so we've lived under these constructs of reality, but when we start to look at reality from a bigger perspective, that linear graph can go away, because the only thing that creates that linear graph is a construct of our lives. And one of the things that comes along with that is we think in terms of limitedness and the human consciousness. So we will make up stories about the human story, and then that becomes the big thing, and then we got to fight for the survival of the human story, whatever that would be. But we live still under the constructs only in that linear thinking. So it is quantum thinking. When we start now looking today at science that is showing us that quantum, if you haven't read anything or heard anything about the quantum computers and how that works, it's starting to understand that it works with a thing called superposition, that something doesn't exist until we observe it. That's one idea of quantums and quantum mechanics. But if you think about quantum, it's potential. That means that there's potentially way more options outside of that linear graph. All of a sudden, this new world becomes with these new ways of looking at the world. And so how do we get to quantum thinking? Well, we have to start removing ourselves from the linear mindset. And so how do we do that? And that's the interesting part. What is it that constructs us? And it's interesting because as I'm saying this out loud, I can speak in so many different ways about how this goes. I can share it in spiritual, metaphysical, but also just very realistic, tangible ideas. And so that's why sometimes I'll meander between these things, because that's the interesting thing, is that once you start quantum thinking, you see more information come together with knowledge. So one of the things you can discover pretty quickly, and I discovered, was that wonder is an aspect of getting outside of that linear thinking. If you think about our educational system, they've done studies on this, that it actually diminishes our creativity. And we start with the cultural norms, we start to take our attention away from things like wonder and expanding and exploring this reality. And it has us, basically trying to fit into a construct of the culture. And the culture, we just have to look at the culture and just say the culture's limited. And so how do we get there? And let me just start with, how did I get here? Because I was I was a thinking kid. So when I was very young, I'd say 10 years old, I had my first existential crisis. I basically, um, I remember it was during the days of Star Wars and understanding science from a the basics of, you know, how, I was told that I would never see the stars. They were way too far away from me. So I had all these scientific limitations. And one night, for some reason, I was out laying on our front yard looking up at the stars. And I just had this sense that, like, I don't know why I'm here. I don't understand this. And then I started looking up at the stars, and I was like, I want to know the truth. I want to know the truth of why I'm here. And I had tears come to my eyes. And because I was like, I'm never going to know the truth of why I'm here. And like, I remember that being a big piece in my mindset that I can understand later in life. What I got to do is I got to travel through all of those linear constructions. I was liberal, I was conservative, and I've gone through, all of the thinking mind around race and ethnicities and gender and just making all of the, trying to put the world together through these constructs. And then I finally found spirituality. I went on a path. I chose many different paths. But the one that really just was the fastest, and it's the thing that I promote the most, is non-duality. And that's where I found the now. And basically what it is that that's the quickest way is our relationship. All of that point, that within that linear scale, all of that is brought together by a part of our minds, the analytical part of our minds, the protector part of our minds. So we look into all of these subjects that I can see now are not important in the way that we look at them. But and then we create some idea of who the good ones are and who the bad ones are, who are our preferences, who, if not. And that's just all a constructed reality. And that also connects with time, meaning that we are focused on the past, or we're also focused on the future. And so we create this idea of time. We talk about it all the time. We enforce it with each other all the time about the past and then the future. And what non-duality does is it brings you into the now. And I would say that that's, once you have the understanding of that, you will understand the difference between paradigm A and paradigm B. Paradigm A is created with the analytical mind to figure out how we control each other. And in paradigm B, you realize that we're co-creators. We can be co-creators with each other, and we can expand consciousness with helping each other. In the control paradigm, in A, it is about controlling people, using behavior. If you can look, there's just tons and tons of ideas about how men should get to women or get women, and how women can get men, and then everybody sits and argues about what it means to be a wife and what it means to be a husband. And this is all just stuff that doesn't exist within the B paradigm. And so, what's quantum thinking? quantum thinking is getting back to that. It is letting go of those constructs, and that's what you find by meditation. You find a part of our minds, and it's interesting because we connect our minds. In paradigm A, we connect our minds believing that our minds are us. And the idea is all that paradigm A thinking did was shut off this other part of our mind. And that other part of our mind holds keys to understandings of reality that are pretty hard to or that are exciting and new and expanding and wonderful, because we start to realize all of our wholeness and our fullness comes from within. And then we go out and we connect with each other to put these pieces back together in love, unity, collaboration, and kindness. So, quantum thinking is blowing, is about letting go of the constructs of paradigm A, and then beginning to look at the world with one another. So once we find it, I'll give you my examples. I woke up to non-duality, let's say. It's hard when you start talking about words. You start getting stuck in conceptual traps. But non-duality, basically I understood that I woke up to this world and understood that all the roles that I had created, I had constructed a personality based upon the outside world, always wanting to be the good guy, thinking about all the roles that I had. I was creating an egoic self in order to match who I thought I was. And so what I woke up to was who I was. It was, I am whole, complete. I don't need to create anything. I'm a construct of my own. I don't need to construct myself based upon my beliefs or my opinions. So I had this knowing, but then I said, what now? Because I woke up to this, and then I'm trying to explain to people, like, reality isn't what you think, and I'm trying to explain to A-minded people that this other reality existed. And then, so for the last 4 years, I've basically been figuring out what you do, because that's what I was like, well, what do I do now? And I got little glimpses along the way, but what I realized, I still had to wake up every day, brush my teeth, and get ready, and go and be a part of what was created in paradigm A. And then I discovered, then you understand in paradigm A that it's just narratives, and people believe narratives, and then they use judgment. I like to use the word prejudice because it was good for my mind to be like, anytime that I'm judging anybody, that's just me reshuffling my prejudice, because that's exactly what it is. And putting the world together that way. But then I started to realize that there was other people that are starting to get this understanding, and there's a narrative out there that is pushing a bigger narrative, which is the new earth, the new world, and it is. And there's many different ways that people are looking at that. And so to me, I've simplified it down to luck. Love, unity, collaboration, and kindness. And basically that's the beginning point where we say, that's what we want. We don't want to go out and we want to pull away from our personalities that were created by a construct of this linear design, get outside of that, be who we are, our authentic self, and move forward in time. And how do we do that? Well, to me, The fastest way is non-duality and not making stories up, because that was my thing. My spiritual journey probably was about 10 years, and that was me trying to unravel the past through the lens of the past. So that's why we have found Lensifarianism, which is stop looking. It's kind of like this narcissist thing that's out there, and the people playing the red flag, green flag game. That's all just judgment. That's all just wrapped up in looking about what we don't want. So paradigm B, it's like, what would your authentic self be if it was whole? It would want it all. It would want all the greatest feelings and sensations and experiences a human can have. So that's why be drawn to what you love. Well, be drawn to the sensations that you want to have. So we like this term, instead of healing, it's wholing. You're becoming whole, and you're moving towards the thing that you want to become. And quantum thinking is thinking, but it's also not even thinking. When the thinking comes up, this is the way I think about it, is that once we get out of that judgmental mind, this other aspect of the mind opens up. And this is where this is where I became a weirdo. And I'm saying this facetiously because I used to, like anybody who would talk about talking to angels, near-death experiences, any of the kind of metaphysical things that people would say, I'm a psychic, I'm a medium, or whatever, that kind of stuff. I was like, well, I'm not going to be a part of that group ever. And so I could say now that angels speak through me. And then, I had somebody ask me, how do you know that they're speaking to you? And it was like, because there's this part, because I don't obsess about a personality anymore, trying to figure out all of these constructs. I have a lot of open space within my mind, and all of a sudden I realized that there's kind of still a personality in there that's playing the way they playing in the A game. I don't know if it's the A game or like a remnants from my past or not. Like, see, that's why I like everybody should be really honest with what they experience. That way people can understand like where people are coming from and relate with them. And this is where I'm at. And then there's this aspect where I act and I'm like, that's not me. Like, why did I do that? I don't even know. It happened the other day. So I had interactions with, and I have no idea why I said the things that I said. It just came through me. And then, and then things like healings, emotional healings, and I've had physical manifestations with other people, just having, when the angels showed up, and they had a healing, like a quick physical manifestation of discomfort being taken away, pain. So when this starts to open up, then a new narrative comes in. And there's, and this is where quantum thinking comes in, is that in B, we don't use offense, because that's the interesting thing. We create these belief systems that we want to make true, and then we defend them. And what we're really doing is defending smaller thinking. We're defending a smaller narrative while another narrative wants to grow outside of it. So the idea of quantum thinking is like bring everything in. That's why in my practices, it is about, and I want to know, I'm down to the tiny little subtle nuances of judgment, or prickliness is a good way to say it. So when I get prickled, I'm like, I'm going to look at that. And then when I find why it prickles me, so it'll be an idea. And then I'll be like, that idea isn't very good. And I'll be like, okay, wait, then I need to figure it out from the point of view that it's the idea is putting out, and then that releases the charge within me. So I want to become as whole as I can. That way I can bring myself completely confrontable, and that's probably one of the biggest things about B, is being totally confrontable, so that if anybody um, if anybody has a problem with me or wants to ask me a question, they can come to me without me needing to defend anything. I can just be. And so, what does that do? Well, it opens up all of these portals. It opens up all of these possibilities. So, this was, here's one for me, was the idea of the flat Earth. And I always just was like, I'm gonna, my little saying that I would say was that I learned in college algebra how flight patterns work with vectors, which would show me that we live in a sphere. But then the other day I was like, okay, but you just don't need to argue with people and make people wrong. And it came to me when I started looking at um, things quantumly, I started thinking of them as dimensions, meaning that I don't know. I don't know what somebody else is experiencing. So it came to me that flat earthers, people who believe in flat earth, actually live in another dimension. And since we want the sphere earth to happen, that we need it to happen, and we close our mind, or we close our mind to that belief. And so, but that they're in their reality, and they are trying to explain flat earth to us, and then we're like, nope, we don't want anything to do with that because I'm on the side of the sphere earthers. So they go and we do those little experiments where they shoot the lasers over water and all these other things to prove it. And it got me thinking that in their world, they get the right. Their experiments actually work out for them. In our world, we make fun of them because their experiment doesn't work in this reality. And I started thinking, well, that's pretty wild. And I was like, cool, because that's quantum. I don't need to have a belief system that's backed by a judgment or a block or a conclusion. It's like, if I'm living in sphere Earth, well, it seems like I'm living in sphere Earth, but maybe I want to live on a flat Earth. And then I can believe in that, and that might appear. I could go into that dimension where that exists, and it's like, what am I drawn towards? And I'm drawn to the new world, so there's nothing wrong with the dimension of the flat Earth, but I am going to continue moving towards the new Earth, and it's really interesting because there's so many different perspectives on the new Earth, and then people are using methodologies that are very paradigm A, basically anything talking about a narcissist and narcissism, that is a paradigm A thing, and but thinking it like, and it's like, that's okay. Like, people are going to have tons of different perspectives. I've also been introduced to the idea of sort of a rapture situation, where as we jump into timelines in these frequencies, there's going to be an event that happens on Earth where people either ascend to this new dimension, or they leave, or they stay on the dimension that they're in. And so it's really interesting to hear lots of different ways that people look at that, and then they have new channelings that say, "Oh, it's not going to happen like that," and then they go into lots of different ways to looking at things, and the thing is about, like, what do we do? to stay a quantum thinker. We just don't have to attach ourselves. That's what I realized. It was like when I heard about the rapture thing, I was like, yeah, I want that, and I want that now. Like, I am ready. I am ready to live in love, unity, collaboration, and kindness. And and then all of a sudden I started getting kind of like, oh, it's not happened yet. It's not happened yet. It's not happened yet. And it's like, okay, it's always coming back to the present. It's always um, staying open to the quantum. And this is and everything in my life has weirdly, like, I live a very, very strange life. And a lot of I'll give an example of, so I'm starting to find people that are B people. And what is a B person to me? A B person is somebody that I can go, they're confrontable, they are looking to expand their perspective, to not rigidly hold on to things. So our conversations are always something new, something bigger, something amazing. Call those fresh bread conversations. And what do we do? Like, they've shared with me how I've been an inspiration to them, and then I share with them how they're an inspiration for me. And what ends up happening is this quantum, and that's one of the really big ideas too, is that in quantum thinking, I turned around, and so it's like going through a new portal. So in quantum thinking, we're staying open to so many more possibilities, and that's just an amazing thing. But if you think about it in that linear graph, the linear way of looking at the world, everything moves very, very slowly. And one of the things so look at paradigm A, and I'm not knocking paradigm A. Paradigm A is just its own thing. It's how it works. The interesting aspects of having that is the control mechanism to try to control humans controlling humans. And the thing of it is it's really based upon uncertainty. And basically what the control system says is, if you will believe us, we will keep you safe. We will give you certainty in this. Well, what ends up happening when we do that, we live in these smaller narratives. And like where there's only this amount, well, I can only think to this edge of the box, and I've got to stop. I've got to stop thinking there. And quantum thinking, it opens up. It's almost too much. It's like, it's overwhelming sometimes, and you have to get used to it because there's so much uncertainty. But there's also, along with this, just a massive amount of novel experiences, new experiences. And that's the thing, the paradigm A. And if you think about the kerfluffle and the way that people are pushing against the systems that were created under paradigm A, and instead of, this is another thing, is that in paradigm A, to fight the system, they use the system to fight the system, and that doesn't work. So it's not a matter, it's just saying, hey, that's the agreement of paradigm A, and I'm just not doing that paradigm. And that's a better way to say it. It's like, I'm doing B. That's how I look at it. I'm doing B, and but once that opens up, this portal of understanding and openness and new ideas and novel ideas start to just flood in, and it's overwhelming. And it's probably what a lot of people are feeling in their frustration. They're feeling like, I want more. There's got to be more to life. There's more to me. That was a big thing for me when I was, I basically, after that existential crisis, I basically dropped in to Paradigm A, dropped out of my belief system in Christianity, really, and just thought, the normal, be good to people, be truthful, and just trying to be a good person. And we don't even worry about that in Paradigm B because our goodness is actually innate, and it comes from within us. So we don't have to fight for our character to look like a good person. You'll just act as a good person. You will say what needs to be said in a moment. And there's lots of terms for this. The middle way, interdependency in psychology, and really to be that's just healthy. It's so funny how we get in these arguments. Sorry, I get a little funny when I look back at Paradigm A with the codependency and narcissism and the way that people use that and get stuck with that. And it's like, when you're your authentic self, then that's when you're interdependent. That's when you're mentally healthy because you're not having to depend on other people to create your reality for you. You're not having to control other people, and they don't have to control you. And it's just a release to that. So, just even seeding, if any of this sounds good, just even seeding yourself with the idea that the quantum is a potential, that is a reality that can exist, that can relax and just go, hey, I don't have to have strong opinions. I don't have to, and that's the way I say, I don't have any opinions, none. I'm off the opinion game. I'm on to perspective. I only want to hold the biggest and the best perspective, and that's my mantra is, if anybody's got a better perspective than I've got now, I want yours. I am going to hijack your perspective and go forward with it. And that's the potential. That's how the potential is opened up in my life. And then just all the beautiful things of all the beautiful sensations that come with that, and the experience of living. And it really becomes very simple that we are here to come and enjoy this experience as a human. And then, but just imagine the collaboration. That's the most exciting thing. So what do we do to get in that space where we've got to not be offended? That's belief. That is belief trapness, where we hold on to a belief needing it to be true by defending it. Because if it's the truth, it doesn't need to be defended. And that's probably the best way to say that. So anyway, I'm interested in what you're seeing so far in this reality. What from this video did clicked with you? Any questions, comments, always open up to feedback. Like I said, if you have a better perspective, I want it. Have a great day.